Hello friends, it's Evelyn here once again. Welcome back to the channel, and as always, the most important thing first, a huge thank you to all of you for continuing to support me. As I am recording this, I've just hit 400 subscribers and I can't believe it. Thank you so much for continuing to watch, like and comment on my content. Thank you so much. It is completely overwhelming as always. And I had to bring you outside today to show you this. If you've been watching my videos over the last few weeks, you will know that I'm a little bit obsessed with my roses right now, and they are definitely starting to come into full bloom now. Aren't they beautiful? If you haven't done so already, friends, please hit that all important subscribe button down below so you don't miss any of my content. It would also be great to see you guys over on my Instagram, which is at Evelyn Adore. I'd love to chat with you and see all of your makes and follow you guys too, so make sure you do that as well. This week we are going to carry on creating tops for our casual inspired vintage spring summer wardrobe by creating one of my very favourite ultimate tops, the wrap top. And this week I'm going to show you how to use those blocks you've already hopefully created to create two different versions of a wrap top. If you haven't created your own blocks patterns yet, there's a link in the description box below so that you can go and do just that. Have you done it yet? Yeah? Great stuff. So let's go and grab our pattern making supplies and some stretch fabric, and let's create your very own wrap tops. Firstly, grab your Jersey block pattern. If you haven't created one yet, there's a card above so you can do just that. For the back of our wrap tops today, we are simply going to use this back pattern as is, cutting one on the fold. You'll notice, however, that my grey top back is in two pieces, and this is simply because I did not have enough fabric to cut on the fold. To begin with adapting our front pattern, we are going to start by tracing the pattern, then flipping it over in order for us to trace a whole bodice front like so. To begin drafting our wrap top, firstly I am coming in from the inner neckline edge by approximately 1.5 inches and making a mark. I am then deciding how long I want my side seam to be, and I have chosen 7 inches, so I am measuring 7 inches up from the waistline and making a second mark. Plot your apex point onto the right hand side of your pattern. Then curve a line joining those 2 points together below your apex point like so to create your wrap top pattern. Remember when using these patterns that there is no hem allowance, so when cutting out be sure to add some allowance anywhere you hem the garment, for example necklines, waistlines and the end of sleeves. For this wrap top, when cutting out, I also extended the pattern slightly from the waistline because I wanted to be able to tuck this top in. All I did was simply come down a few inches from the waistline, mirroring the pattern's shape like so. If you imagine you'll cut one piece with the wrap to the right and one piece with the wrap to the left by flipping your pattern piece over, and this is how we create a wrap front. For the sleeve on our first wrap top, simply grab your Jersey sleeve block and trace around a 3/4 sleeve. For your tie, your pattern piece length will be 1.5 times your waist measurement. The width will be 2 times your desired finished width. I made mine a total of 6 inches wide. Remember to add seam allowance to this piece when you cut out. Starting with our tie pieces, fold them right sides together in on themselves widthways and pin all the way along one short end and all along the length, leaving one short end open. Then sew all the way along this pinned edge using a narrow zigzag. Trim away the corners and seam allowances around your sewn ties, clipping into the seam allowance every ½ inch or so before turning them the right way out to help you achieve a nice crisp edge. Then give them a nice press. Now construct the sleeves, pinning the side seam like so and sewing all the way along using that narrow zigzag. Now is also a great opportunity to hem the sleeves before adding them to the garment. Simply fold in the hem allowance to the wrong side of the garment, top stitching in place with a zigzag stitch. Finish your back neckline in the same way, folding the hem allowance to the wrong side of the garment and top stitching in place. Repeat this process on the front neckline of both of your wrap top fronts. Now it's time to attach the ties to the front bodice pieces. With the front bodice facing right side up, pin the raw edge of the tie along the top outer edge of the shorter side seam, placing the sewn hem of the tie to the bottom like so. Repeat this process with both front bodice and tie pieces, sewing the ties in place using a straight stitch this time, as we don't want this seam stretching out over time and causing our top to bag. Pin the seam allowances to the inside of the garment and stitch in place with a straight stitch, creating a nice neat finish. Now it's time to join the front and back bodice pieces at the shoulder seams, placing them right sides together and pinning all the way along before stitching in place with a zigzag stitch. time for side seams. On the right side of our top, pin all along the side seam with right sides together. With the left side seam, we are going to leave an opening at the bottom for our tie to pass through. I extended my pattern slightly so that I could tuck my wrap top in. So I'm going to pin and then sew from the bottom of my top the length of that extension that I made, then leaving 3 inches open, which is the width of my finished tie, then pinning and sewing the rest of the side seam closed. And here I am, just placing my tie alongside that pinned side seam to mark the opening in exactly the right place. Sew these side seams on your machine with a zigzag stitch to help retain the stretch in your garment. The tie opening, fold the seam allowances to the inside of the garment and pin them in place. Top stitch them in place using a straight stitch to prevent the opening stretching out and creating a nice neat finish. Now it's time to set in the sleeves. Find the centre of the top of your sleeve by folding the sleeve in half along the seam line and placing a pin along the top fold like so. I find the easiest way to insert a sleeve is to have your sleeve right side out and your garment wrong side facing you. Place your sleeve inside the garment, the raw edges of the arm side and the sleeve cap meeting with their right sides together. Match the underarm sleeve seam to the side seam on your bodice. And match the pin at the top of your sleeve to the shoulder seam on the bodice. Pin all around the arm side, attaching the sleeve to the bodice with right sides together, evenly distributing the fabric, stretching to do so when needed. Over on your machine, use a narrow zigzag stitch to insert your sleeves. To finish our first wrap top, hem the bottom of the top by simply folding in the hem allowance to the wrong side of the garment and top stitching in place with a narrow zigzag. Our next wrap top has flutter sleeves and a wider sash that ties at the side. To draft your flutter sleeves, begin by tracing a short sleeve from your jersey sleeve block. Draw a line down the approximate centre of the sleeve pattern. Draw another 2 lines from the top of the centre of your first line diagonally down to the bottom of the pattern piece, effectively dividing it into 4. Now cut up these lines almost to the top of the pattern, creating hinges between the sections. Place some spare pattern paper behind the pattern and using the hinges add some fullness between the sections to create your flutter sleeve pattern. Tape the sections in place and smooth the upper and lower lines to finish the sleeve pattern. For the sash, your pattern piece is as long as your waist measurement, with the width once again being twice your desired final measurement. I made mine 10 inches wide in total. Again, remember to add seam allowance all around this pattern piece when cutting your sash pieces out. Construction of the sash is the same as for the tie. Fold it in half widthways, sewing along one short edge and all along the length. Once again, trim the seam allowances and clip into them to allow you to turn a nice crisp clean edge. Turn your sash pieces out and give them a good press. Using the longest length straight stitch on your sewing machine, sew a line of gathering stitches along the raw ends of the sash pieces at 1/4 inch. Be sure to leave a length of cotton at the end of your stitching. Hem your sleeves and your back and front necklines by folding in the hem allowances to the inside of the garment and stitching them in place with a narrow zigzag. Now construct the sleeves by sewing the side seams, again using that narrow zigzag. Pin the ties to the short side seam as for the first wrap top, but this time pull on the bobbin threads to allow the wider sash to be gathered to fit the side seam. Pin the ties in place before sewing on the machine with a straight stitch. Once again, fold the seam allowances to the inside of the garment and stitch in place using a straight stitch to achieve a nice neat edge. Join the bodice fronts and back together by sewing the shoulder seams. Right sides together, pin them in place before stitching on the machine with a narrow zigzag. Now it's time to sew those side seams, remembering to leave that all-important gap in the left side so that our tie can fit through. Give a neat finish to the tie opening by folding the seam allowance into the garment and stitching in place with a straight stitch. Next, insert those beautiful flutter sleeves, attaching them using a narrow zigzag stitch. Finally, finish off your wrap top by hemming it, folding the hem allowance inwards to the wrong side of the fabric and stitching in place with a narrow zigzag. Can you speak? Oh, hello. Hello. So there we have it, friends, how to create your very own wrap tops in 2 different styles. Do you want one, Lena? Yeah, I think you'd look good in a wrap top. But from Luna and I, and from the Roses, until next week, have a great week. Stay safe, friends. Bye.